Now we're going to look at how we can incorporate the query loop, but in a little bit of a different manner. We're going to be using the query loop within a carousel. We'll be making something called a post carousel. In WordPress, this is a visual element that displays a set of blog posts in a sliding format. This allows users to scroll through multiple posts horizontally. It's similar to a slideshow, where only a few images are visible at once. This encourages exploration of related content on a web page. Let's see how we can add this into our website. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install a plugin that's going to allow us to build this feature. I'll go to Plugins, Add New Plugin, and I'm going to search for a plugin called Spectra. The Spectra Gutenberg block plugin allows you to add a plethora of features to your website. They have both a free and a pro version. We'll be using the free version. I'm going to go ahead and install this now. Then I'll activate it. And when you first install this particular plugin, you will be greeted with a video that talks about what this plugin is. If you want more information, you can of course watch this. You can also read the full Spectra guide. There's a lot of things that it allows you to do, so it's probably worth digging into. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can use this in our website right now. What I want to do is I want to add a blog slideshow to my homepage. We're going to be adding it underneath this call to action area that we built earlier in our class. Before we get into the homepage, I'm going to go to my posts page. I just want to point out that we're going to be using our posts that contain the categories of care and tips. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 posts that have those categories assigned to them. I'll go into my pages and we're going to go and edit our home page. I previously added another stack to my home page that just is using a header and a paragraph. We're going to be making this new area underneath our CTA block. In order to do this, I'll create a new row that's going to contain these elements. Inside the row, I'm going to create a header and I'm going to type some text. Then I'll go ahead and create a paragraph. As you can see, because I created these in a row, they currently sit side by side. But really, I want them to be stacked on top of each other. Let's actually convert this row into a stack so that these elements sit on top of each other. I'll go ahead and click the containing element, which is currently a row, and switch it to a stack. It's really easy to be able to switch these elements by simply clicking the containing element and then choosing the element that you want to switch it to. We'll also go ahead and we will ensure that our elements are aligned to the center. I'm going to select my paragraph. We're going to make the text slightly larger, and then we're going to go ahead and make sure that these elements have a little bit less spacing in between them. In order to do this, I'll select the parent element, I'll go to Styles, and we're going to make sure that our block spacing is set down to 2 extra small. Now I'm ready to insert my post carousel. In order to do this, I'm going to open up my list view and we'll select the plus sign. If you look into your block editor, you're going to see that you have a bunch more block elements that are available to you. These new ones are located underneath the header of Spectra. These are all elements that the Spectra plugin gives us. Underneath these are the plugins that we've been using so far that come with WordPress. But for right now, we're going to be working with these. The one that we want to use is the post carousel. So I'm going to click this. And as you can see, it already sets this up for me in some way. Luckily, we have all kinds of ways in which we can modify this. But let me just save this and let's look at it in the front end so that you can see what it looks like straight out of the box. As you can see, it's displaying 3 of my posts, and it will automatically progress through the posts, rotating them. We have navigational elements that allow us to go to the previous and next element, and then we can also use these little dots down here to navigate through the posts. Let's go back to the backend part of WordPress and let's look at how we can style these elements. Because I have this particular post carousel selected, I'm going to see the options that I have available over here on the right. The way that Spectra has set these up is similar to what we've been working with right out of WordPress. I do like how they allow you to change general parameters, style the element, and then have an advanced category. Under general, we can control things like the alignment of the text. So now my text is centered. I'm going to keep this to the left. What elements we want to cycle through. I'll leave this at posts. If I go under categories, I can choose the category that I want to show. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to assign more than one category. So I want to show both my care and my tips posts. In order to do that, I'm going to need to make sure that the posts that I want have the category that I want to use. So we'll save our page. We'll go back to the WordPress dashboard. I'm going to go to Posts, All Posts, and the posts that I want to display, I'm going to make sure that they all have the category of tips. I will do a quick edit and I'll just turn on the checkbox for tips for the posts that I want to include in my carousel. Now these 4 posts all have the category of tips. We'll go back to all pages and we'll edit our home page. Now if I come down to my post carousel, I can go ahead and change the category to tips. It will now display the 4 posts that I have created that use the category of tips. Only these 4 are going to show. In addition to doing this, you can choose how many posts you want to display. So if I had 8 tips posts, only 6 of them would show. You can turn this on, which will offset and skip the number of post sets, but that's not going to really apply to us because we only have 4 posts. You can also order the posts by date, title, random, or menu order. I'm going to select random so they come in randomly. And you can choose how many columns you want to display. I'm going to reduce this down to 2. So I will only show 2 of my posts at a time. But of course, this is going to cycle through, which is going to allow the user to see them all. I'm also going to turn on equal height to make sure that the posts are of equal height. It is worth mentioning that when you turn on equal height, this is not something that's going to show up in the WordPress editor, but only on the live front end portion of our site. Now we'll come down to the carousel category. This is going to allow us to choose how we want the carousel to work. Currently, pause on hover is on. So you can see my carousel is cycling through. But if I hover over, it will pause. Autoplay is also turned on, which means that it's going to automatically play. If we want to turn that off, we can simply turn that off, and now the user will have to use the navigational elements in order to play our carousel. I'll leave this off for right now, but we'll turn it on when we're done with our edits. Infinite loop will allow the carousel to infinitely loop through however many posts you're displaying. The transition speed is going to control how fast the carousel is going to go. I'm going to up this to 1,000. This number is equal to milliseconds, so 1,000 is about a second. You can also choose if you want to show just the arrows, and now you can see the dots disappear, just the dots, and now we don't have the arrows, or if you want to display them both. We can go to content and we can decide which elements we want to display. So I definitely want to show the title. The author is already off. I don't want to show the date here, and I don't want to show comments, so I'm going to turn those off. We're not using any sort of meta icon, but we're going to turn this off. And so all we're going to show is our excerpt, the title, and we're going to show the featured image. In addition to showing an excerpt, you could optionally choose to display the full post. You can also specify how many words you want in your excerpt. So currently, my excerpt is being truncated after 15 words. I'm going to pump this up to 20, so they have a little bit more of the excerpt to be able to read. The Read More link is going to control the link that allows users to click so that they can read more. I want this call to action to show, but let's go ahead and make this a button that only has an outline. We can style the button using the Style panel, and we'll do that in just a minute. Finally, we have the preset area. This is a place where you can choose how you want these to be displayed. So if I was to choose this one, you can see that now the posts are going to show with this overlay instead of having the text show underneath the featured image. When you show the posts in this way, you need to be careful that the text is readable over these. So let's leave this style, and then we'll look at how we can design them once we get to the style pane. Obviously, if you have the Pro version, you have a couple more options. Honestly, we have plenty of things that we're able to augment with the free version. I'll go to the style area, and we can change the way that the layout looks. Currently, I have color selected, and I can choose a background color. So if I go ahead and specify a background color, we're not actually going to see this since our preset is set to the overlay. But if I switch to one of these other options, you can see how the background color shows up. I'll go back to the overlay and return to style. I'm going to get rid of the background color, and I'm going to increase the gap a little bit. This is going to just put a little bit more room between our posts. Padding is the spacing on the inside of this box. I'm going to go ahead and set this to 30, and I'll do that all the way around. If I go to title, I can control the way that the title looks. I'm going to change my title to H3 to make it a little bit larger. If you wanted to augment your typography, you could go ahead and click the pencil icon and make any edits to the typography, but I think ours looks fine. Bottom spacing is the spacing between the title and the excerpt. I'm going to reduce this a little bit. Under excerpt, we can control how we want our excerpt to display. I'll go to color, and I'm going to choose white and make sure that it's at 100%. I'll reduce the bottom spacing here as well, and we'll bring that down to 15. Here's where we can style our Read More link. Currently, the color of the text is set to blue. I'm going to go ahead and switch this to white. Then we'll go to the background color, and we're going to add a background color. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to choose our teal color, and then I'll bring the opacity down considerably. You also have options to adjust the typography, adjust the border, but I like the border as is, and you can adjust the radius. On hover, we can change what this looks like. So when you hover over my button, I'm going to change the hover color, and let's go ahead and make this our lime green. Now you can see when I hover over, the outline becomes the lime green. We can add padding to our buttons, but I think they look fine, and control the spacing on the bottom. If we go to image, this is going to allow us to control the way the image looks. Currently, the background overlay is set to a dark black. You can control the opacity of this, or you can change the color to be something else. I like the black, so I'm going to leave that as is, and I'll leave this all the way up to 100%. Even though this is set to 100%, our overlay opacity is set to 40, so the opacity is really more like 40%. Let's increase this a little bit just to improve the readability of our text. I'm going to set this to 60. Finally, we can style the arrows and the dots. This is where we can set the color for these elements. I'm going to go ahead and use our dark teal since that's the color that we're using on most of our buttons. Let's go ahead and save this. And let's look at it in the front end portion of the website. I'll refresh, and now you can see what this looks like. So here are my elements, and something happened to our arrows, so let's go back and check on those. I'm going to go back to general, and I'm going to make sure that my carousel is set to both. Somehow it got switched to dots, so I'm going to turn these back on. And now if we go to style, you'll see under arrows and dots, we have the option to change the arrows and the dots. I'll leave the border size at 2, but I am going to increase the border radius to 50, so these are round. I'm going to decrease the distance from the edge. We'll set these to 0, so they're a little bit closer. And I'm also going to decrease the margin for the dots to make them a little bit closer to my picture as well. Let's go back to general, and we're going to make sure that autoplay is back on, which it is. I'm going to set my autoplay speed to 2000, which is 2 seconds. The transition speed is going to be reduced down to 500, which is half a second. Let's save this and see if we like the way this looks in the front end. I'll click refresh, and you can see that now the images and the posts are going to stay on the screen for about 2 seconds before they transition to the next item. If you ever decide that you want to change the way any of this looks, it's really easy to come back in here and augment the way it looks. I'm going to go back to general and click presets, and I'm going to set these back to what they were originally. I kind of like the fact that the image shows and then I have my text and then the excerpt. Once you've done this, you may need to go back and change some of your settings. So at this point, I might want to adjust any of these things. It is worth taking time to experiment around with these to make sure this is set up exactly how you want it to look. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change my number of columns back to 2, and then I'll go to style and I'm just going to darken up my buttons a little bit. Now that they're not sitting on top of the images, I think that the color could be a little different. We'll go into our read more link. I'm going to change my background color and make sure it's set to my teal, but I want the full opacity of the teal. I think this is looking good. I'm going to save and we'll preview one more time in the front end. We just want to make sure that everything is set up in the way that we want. For whatever reason, my autoplay has stopped playing, so let's go back to general and make sure that that is turned on. This option is under Carousel, and it looks like this is turned on, but let's go ahead and turn it off and turn it back on again. And then I'll set my autoplay speed to 2000, and the transition speed can be 500. Let's save this. We'll refresh, and every 2 seconds, it should automatically rotate to the next post. If the user hovers over, the autoplay is going to stop playing, and then the user can click either the image, the title, or the read more button to go to that particular post. I really like the flexibility of being able to add a post carousel. I think this is a great way to draw your users' attention to certain posts that are part of your website project, and I believe that you will find a lot of use for something like this in your projects.